If you are trying to be a high performer, or if you're someone who is already, you would consider yourself a high performer, let's talk about today what some of those struggles are that we experience as we try to transform into a high performer and unleash that greatness within us, and the struggles of what we go through in trying to maintain ourselves as a high performer. I think it's so important to just take a step back and normalize these things for ourselves because it's so easy to feel so alone on this journey. And I don't know about you, but that's always the thing that gets me. I just always feel like I'm doing this all by myself, all on my own. And when we can just take a step back to talk about our struggles, share them, normalize them, you start to see that it's just a part of the journey and the game. And it gets so much easier to persevere and push through when you just start to normalize and see your struggles for what they are, which are just struggles that everybody essentially goes through and experiences. So, struggle number one that people don't talk about on the way to becoming a high performer or maintaining yourself as a high performer is that it has to be an everyday thing. And I'm sure that you've realized this in your own life as well, right? You stop working on the things that help you show up as a high performer in your life, right? You start slipping up on the number of hours you need sleep. You start slipping up on the foods that you need to eat. You start slipping up on the mindset strategies, and those negative thoughts just come in more and more and kind of feel a lot more sticky. And you just kind of stop doing these things. It could be because circumstances in life came up, or you ended up just getting too comfortable and you're just like, oh, well, I can just skip it. Like, I already feel good. Like, it's okay. And as soon as you start slipping up on a couple of things, it becomes this like big giant snowball effect. And then before you know it, you're like, oh my God, I am no longer performing at the level that I should have been performing, or that I should be performing at, or that I was performing at. Where you just wake up and you're like, oh my God, stuff doesn't feel good anymore. And the stress and the anxieties and all of that stuff is back. And what people don't talk about is like how you literally have to wake up and make this be an everyday thing. And I'm not talking about trying to be perfect every single day. That's not what this is about. It's about just waking up, setting the intention to try to show up as your best self. And your best self and what that looks like is going to vary from different day to different day, but it's ultimately about waking up and trying to do that and setting the intention to do that. I have seen such a radical shift in myself on the days where I actually wake up and set an intention for myself to show up as a high performer in my life versus the days that I slip up on that. And the chaos of life ends up getting to me, and I start slipping up on my strategies and things that actually help me stay in that high performer state. It's almost like working at a muscle, right? Or running. I am starting to train for a half marathon, and I haven't I run here and there, but I haven't run to this extreme in a while. And I'm just like, oh my God, I forget how hard it is to actually train for a half marathon. And it's because I originally took this break from running, right? So it takes your body time to actually start developing these skills again, essentially. And so that's why this is just so important that if you kind of want to avoid this one struggle, you have to start seeing it as like an everyday thing. And being a high performer, it has to be intentional. It has to be every day. You have to be reflecting on a weekly basis and checking in with yourself and doing these reflections to make sure that you stay in that state. A lot of times, what we also do too is that we'll set the intention for the morning, but then we'll just lose that intention because we never brought ourselves back to it. We never took ourselves back to this intention and reminded ourselves of how we really need to be showing up in the day to day. So it's not enough to just even wake up and set the intention once, but you have to make sure that throughout the day, you're finding ways to pull yourself back to the intention because let's be honest, y'all, life gets chaotic. Life gets hectic. And you and I both know that it's so easy to get lost in the chaos of life. Even if you wake up and you set the intention and you're trying to go out and do the right thing and show up as your best self, life can still get chaotic. And so it's so important that we have periods in time throughout the day that we kind of keep pulling ourselves back into this state, into our high performer self. And if you start doing that, it becomes easier to show up as a high performer consistently. But as soon as you lose it, man, as soon as you stop practicing this muscle, It just stops you stop showing up in life in that way. So I want to normalize that for you. If it feels really frustrating that it has to be like that, it is. But that's just how everything in life works. Like if you stop working out your muscles, you're going to get weaker and you're going to lose muscles. It has to be an everyday thing. It has to be an everyday thing, an everyday practice. And in a way, I think it's almost better when you start seeing it like that, and really just accepting that fact, because then it just makes it easier to just show up, because you just got to put in that work on that everyday basis. So keep that in mind, right? It is a struggle that not enough people talk about, but I want to talk about it with you and share that so that you understand it has to be an everyday thing. And if you make it be an everyday thing, like, life just becomes that much more beautiful every single day. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to make it be an everyday thing? Okay. The other struggle when it comes to high performers is that people, when you start to really work on yourself, when you start to just show up in life as your best self and you start achieving and striving towards your goals, people just automatically assume and think that you're thriving and your life is good. And that's it. Like, you're just in this constant state of feeling good and constant state of thriving. And sometimes it can actually make it really hard for you to show up the way that you want to show up, because, or even ask for like help sometimes, because people just constantly think that you are thriving. And I think it's so important that you make sure that you're also reaching out for help and expressing and sharing to people when you feel like you're struggling, and know that there's nothing shameful about that, because I do find that when you start to thrive more in life, people honestly check up on you less, because they just see you thriving out there crushing your goals, and they just automatically assume that you're busy or you're doing amazing and everything is okay. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the people in your life don't actually love you. It just means that you probably just need to reach out to them more and let them know that you're struggling, because it's so easy for other people to think that you are thriving and doing well even when you're not. This happens to me all the time. Like, I will tell people I'm struggling and they'll be like, "But what? You're struggling? But you help so many other people and you do this and it looks like you're thriving on your social medias." And I'm just like, yeah, this is my business. Like, I got to show up in a certain way because of my business, but that doesn't mean that internally I'm necessarily thriving and doing the best and feeling the best all the time. So if you experience the struggle, know that it's not that people don't love you. It's not that you're not cared for. It's that you just need to reach out and let people know when you're struggling, because people have this idea that high performers are just constantly feeling good. They're just constantly thriving, and that isn't the case. Like, we're all human. And we all experience our struggles, and everybody does it as well. So, the other huge struggle when it comes to being a high performer is forgetting about the fact that you can. Sorry, there's one piece of hair. I'm just like, hair, what are we doing here? The other piece too is that we forget about the fact that we are actually supposed to be feeling good as we strive towards our goals. And when we're working on becoming a high performer or trying to sustain ourselves at the high performer state that we're at, we forget about the fact that you're supposed to feel good as you do it. Brendon Burchard, he's like the world's top high performer coach. He has taken a lot of data from different high performers, and what he's found is that high performers aren't just people who are exceptional at achieving their goals, but they're also healthier and happier, more content, experience more joy in their life as they do it. And I think that that is just like absolutely mind blowing, because a lot of us think that these people who are high performers are super stressed out. They're not. They're not thriving. Their health is suffering. Their relationships are suffering, but that isn't true. True high performers are the people that have the ability to like show up exceptionally in all areas of their life. It doesn't mean consistently, it doesn't mean all at once, right? Because obviously we also have to be realistic as to how we show up in certain areas of life, but ultimately it comes down to like feeling good as you strive towards your goals. And it can be so easy when you're working on becoming a high performer, or you're trying to sustain being a high performer, to get lost in the stresses and the pressures of everyday life. So easy to lose yourself in it. And so I think it's really important that you have ways that you're constantly pulling yourself back to joy throughout the day. I like to call these ways pattern interrupters, right? When you notice those really hard and difficult feelings coming up, you find ways to interrupt the pattern, right? You take the deep breaths, you go on a walk, play your favorite music and have like a jam session on your own. It's probably one of my favorite ways. And so when you do something like a pattern interrupter, it brings you back to a feel good state. And again, this has to be an everyday thing because it's so easy for our brain to get pulled into not feel good state because the role of your brain, remember, is to keep you protected and to keep you safe. And your brain does that by keeping you in this negative state because if you're in that negative state, you forever stay in your comfort zone. So it's so important that normalizing this, that it's really easy to get pulled into negativity and the chaos of life, but as much as possible, you need to have ways throughout the day that bring you back into that feel good state because you don't have to be miserable while working towards your goals. You don't have to be miserable while trying to build the life of your dreams. It's not supposed to be miserable, you all. Like, what a shame, right? That we are just so miserable and unhappy while trying to pay our bills, while trying to set these goals, while trying to, make our visions of life come to life. You can have joy and experience joy as you do it. The other struggle of trying to be a high performer is trying to balance being a high performer in all areas of life. So many people I'll talk to and they'll be like, I'm great at being a high performer in my career, but then I forget about my relationships and then I forget about my health. And it's so hard for me to show up and get the same results in these areas of life. And the reason is that it's where the attention goes, right? I'll find too with myself is like when I'm just super honed in on one specific area of life, that is the area of life that's ultimately going to flourish. And so it's so important that when you set goals in life, you're not just setting goals for career, set goals for your relationships, set goals for your health, and make sure that just as much as you are monitoring progress for your career, you're also setting out time every single week to monitor progress for your relationships, to monitor progress for your career, because it is super, super important to do that. And so that's how you kind of get over the struggle of trying to balance being a high performer in all areas of life and understand too, like you're going to have different seasons of life, right? You're going to have different seasons of life where you are focusing a bit more on career than your relationships or a bit more on health than your career. And so it's okay to go through these seasons, but that doesn't mean you can't show up as the best version of yourself in the areas of the life when you're required to show up in those areas of life. And then the last struggle about, either becoming a high performer or trying to maintain your high performer level is just you forget about supporting your body sometimes. We get so caught up in needing to take the action. Like I know for me, for example, sometimes, I'll get so caught up in building my business that I'll sometimes neglect my body and I'll forget to do the workout or I'll push it and say I'll do it tomorrow. I need to get this one other task done. Or, I have like a hour carved out to make my dinner and make it be healthy, but then I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna, eat something out and I'm gonna take this extra 30-40 minutes to actually get some more work done. Or I'm gonna stay up late and get this work done and get that done. And you just forget about supporting your body because you are just so honed in on needing to get the work done. And I think it's so important that you really understand the importance of supporting your body while you're being a high performer and know that getting that extra thing done on your to-do list is not worth you running only on like 4 hours of sleep because that is really going to impact and harm your health long term. And I think it's so important that we find that right balance for ourselves because I know we have such a big hustle grind culture, like work hard, work hard, work hard, put in the hours, all you do is work, but we don't do it at the expense of our body. And we have to, and I don't know about you, but I have to consistently check in with myself because it's very easy to sacrifice our health to get one more thing done, but it's not worth it. And that's where we really have to take a step back and ask ourselves, like, is this really worth it? Because if done consistently, and don't get me wrong, once in a while, we all got to have those, like, 4-hour sleeps because we need to get something done. But if it's happening on a consistent basis where you're consistently neglecting your body to get more things done, you're on a one-way path to burnout, one-way path to disease, and you're not going to be able to excel in your craft the way that you want to because your body isn't supported. So it's a big struggle. We all experience this struggle, but it's so important that you tune in with yourself and make sure that you're not getting caught up in this struggle because it's going to really impact your ability to be a high performer long term. So these are kind of the top struggles of trying to be a high performer, of sustaining your high performer level that no one talks about. So you are not alone in any of these things. Realize when these struggles are showing up and know that there's so much that you can do to change it up when you develop the awareness for that. If you want support with that, I'm here for you. You can always book a free 30-minute discovery call with me. If you haven't done so already, take my What Type of High Performer Are You quiz so that you can uncover your high performer type, because there are 7 different high performers out there and each high performer has a unique brain that needs support in unique ways. So uncover your type and start learning how to support your brain.